Hi, Elaine here. Today I'll be sharing how you can create unequal gutters in a data merge layout in Affinity Publisher. You might be wondering why you'd have a need to do this. So let me explain the problem before sharing the solution. The Data Merge Layout tool allows you to create a grid into which your data will be flowed according to the settings you choose. Let's take a look at this specification for a sheet of labels. The labels are A4 with 10mm margins. There's 18 labels to the sheet. Each label is 60mm by 42mm with a gutter of 5mm both vertically and horizontally between each label. That's easy. It works perfectly. Let's see it in action. A new document. It's A4. It's a single page. RGB, margins of 10mm all the way round and no bleed. Create that. It's a simple matter of going and getting the Data Merge Layout tool, drawing out a grid within the margins. You'll recall we need 18 labels, which is 3 columns and 6 rows. And the space between each label, both horizontally and vertically, is 5mm. So in the gutter option, put 5mm. Absolutely straightforward. So what's the problem? Well, the big issue with the Data Merge Layout tool is that the gutter option only allows a single value to be specified for both the horizontal and the vertical gutter, which means for many labels it becomes a hit and miss process of tweaks and workarounds to make the data fit the space without causing layout problems in the final merge. This was the situation facing a channel viewer who asked if there were any good options to easily merge their data into an Avery J4785 layout. The settings for that are as follows. A4 with margins on the left 17.5mm, on the right 17.5mm, 13mm at the top and 13mm at the bottom. The labels are actually 10 self-adhesive name badges with a height of 50mm and a width of 80. There is a horizontal gutter of 5mm between the labels and a vertical gutter of 15mm. You will not be doing that with the current version of the Data Merge Layout tool. Well, not without a dirty hack, you won't. But the good news is it is doable, and here's how. I'll set up a new page for this. I'll have an A4 layout. It only needs one page, colours RGB, margins are going to need to be slightly different. The margins were 17.5, 17.5 on the right, top of 13mm and the bottom of 13mm. And create. Now we're going to need some guides to mark out the precise layout that we need. Up to View, down to Guides, and start adding the guides that we need. We're actually going to need 10. 8 of them are going to be horizontal and 2 of them are going to be vertical. So I've added all 8 horizontal and I've added both vertical. You'll notice when you do that, they're all placed in the same position, the middle horizontally and the middle vertically. And then it is a simple matter of going through and changing them to the precise locations that you need. So double click each one and I'm typing in the locations I need. Moving across and doing the same with the vertical guides. Once that's complete, we have a clear idea of where our content needs to be placed in this file. And close that dialog box. Now I am going to add a Data Merge layout. So across to the Data Merge Layout tool, and I am going to draw one in to the first square we have at the top, which is very different than the normal way we do it, where we create a full layout. What I'm going to do here is change the columns in the Data Merge layout to 1 and the row to 1, and then zoom into it. Now I actually have a pre-configured layout that I'm going to copy and paste into that, purely to save time. So all this is 3 text boxes, an image, and a shape with a border on it. Selecting that, copying it, moving back to my file and paste. It has pasted those elements within the Data Merge layout. They're not positioned correctly, but I can sort that just dragging them back and putting them into place using the guides as, guess what? guides. Now at this point, this is just text. My TechCon 2025 is text. This is a vector image that I have next to it. And then I have 3 text boxes. And all that's in them at the moment is plain text. These need to be hooked up to the data source now. Let's take a look at that data source. This is the data in Excel: first name, last name, position, department and company. And these are the attendees. So this is the data I will be hooking up to. To do that within Affinity Publisher, I'm going to Window, Data Merge Manager, add a data merge source, which is my attendees. Always good practice if you have more than one sheet to make sure you have the correct sheet selected in the drop-down. I only have a single sheet, so it's very straightforward. I can close that at the moment because my next task is to make sure I have fields in these text boxes rather than just plain text. So selecting it and deleting it. Then I need to use the Fields panel, and I'll pull that out so we can see it, to replace the plain text with actual fields. So there's the first name. I need to manually then put a space in there, followed by the last name. Then in my position, double-clicking position, making sure I have a space, then deleting the department to add the department field, and finally the company. And now the data is coming from my data source rather than being just plain text. And I'll pop that up out of the way. Now what we can do is check that this is actually working at the moment. So back up to Window and down to Data Merge Manager. And there is an option to preview with a record. So put a tick in that box and it shows us the real data from the spreadsheet. You can move through your data. You would do this mainly to check that the data is fitting into the space that you have for it. And they all look fine. But I can't run the data merge yet. So I'm going to move that onto my other screen. So we'll bring it back when needed. But right now I'm going to zoom out to look at the whole page. And obviously the problem is, unlike the standard way of using the data merge layout tool, where I would have 10 layouts, I only have 1. But the trick with this is you're not actually limited to a single data merge layout on a page. Obviously, I have 1 data merge layout. We can see that in the layers panel. Nothing to stop me copying that, pasting it, and moving it into my second space. Then, selecting the first one, holding the Shift key down and selecting the second one, I can copy and paste, or I can hold the Option key down and drag. Place that in position, and then Command and J, Command and J, Command and J. And that gives me 10 copies of it. Now you could be thinking, but Elaine, it's 10 copies of the same record. It is because at the moment we're just previewing it. But as I said, you can have multiple copies of a data merge layout, and rather giving you the same data in every layout, it iterates through your data source. To see that, we're going to need to generate this. So I'm bringing the Data Merge Manager dialog box back on the screen. I'm taking the tick out of preview with a record, and I'm going to generate this. And close the Data Merge Manager. And we have exactly what you would expect using the Data Merge Layout tool in the standard way, where the Data Merge Layout has 10 cells. The only difference is we have 10 copies of a single data merge layout. But I have 20 records, I have 10 on that page, and looking at the first page, I have the other 10. There is only one caveat with that, which is back in your pre-merge file, if you decide to make a change, you are going to have to delete all but the first layout, make changes to that first layout, and then create 9 more copies of it. But it works perfectly. So let's have a quick recap of that. The Data Merge Layout tool only allows for a single gutter measurement. Depending on the output you require, this might work as it did in the first example. But a better option would be to have separate horizontal and vertical gutter settings. In the absence of this option, I've found the fastest way to achieve what I want is to use guides to mark out the layout that you need, create a single data merge layout with 1 row and 1 column. Connect to your data source, create the layout you need inside that single data merge cell. Once that's done and you're happy with it, duplicate it to all the other locations you need using the guides for precise positioning. Run the data merge and you're done. If you want new tutorials and tips and tricks on a regular basis, check out my free training at elainegiles.com/VIP. Hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss future tutorials. And if you have any requests for specific tutorials, be sure to contact me. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and see you next time.